human trial kind of evolved from a couple personal experiences that I had that caused me to realize there had to be a lot of options that we are unaware of especially in this country where our medical system is very much controlled and regulated. So anyway, so we're here to explore all the approaches that one might want to consider for health and wellness and longevity. And so I am the author of The Human Trial, and my guest today is Traci Potterf. It's a, am I saying that correct, Traci Potterf?
Yeah, it's Traci Potterf. Yeah.
Okay, well,
I might have an ability to like type my name in, but
it ends with an F. Potter with an F.
It ends with an F. It's Potterf. Potter with
an F.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Traci is a PhD. She has a degree from UC Berkeley, and in conjunction with UCSF Medical School, she received degrees in medical anthropology and functional medicine. Both of those things we'll probably have to have defined for us. A little bit about her background is her father was a psychiatrist, and he influenced her interest in medicine, but it was her own battles with debilitating anxiety that led her to understanding and curing not only herself, but many anxiety sufferers in her practice. All of this is background for how Traci approaches wellness, mental and otherwise today. And the last note before we start is there will be Q&A at the end of this session. But if you have a question now, you can always put it in the chat box on the Zoom, or we'll get to your questions directly at the end of our session today. So let me see what I am missing here. I think we've got it pretty well. So let's just begin then with Traci telling us a little bit about your background, how you got here.
Hey, Audrey, thanks. So, yeah, my dad was a psychiatrist. And so growing up, anything that was alternative or integrative or whatever was like woo-woo, was for crazy people, was not legitimate. And my understanding of mental illness, I actually helped in my father's psychiatric practice. Like when I was little, I'd be on a stool, like making copies and then filing. I still hate putting away laundry because it feels like filing at my dad's office. And so like from a young age, I was in this environment. And then up and through my teen years and even in college during the summers, I'd come back and work in his office. And from a young age, he would take me with him to see his patients. So I was kind of like this emotional support kid he would take with him to the hospitals and psych wards and nursing homes. And so I grew up not questioning any of it. And my understanding was that these people who came in, his patients, had some kind of genetic chemical imbalance, and they needed these medications to fix it. And then maybe they would go to talk therapy or something. And that was pretty much all you could do. That's what my understanding was. And that was the best option. And that's all the legitimate options. And then when I was 19, I had a panic attack. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm one of them. And I like to say that I felt like my cheese was sliding off my cracker and would never come back. I was really scared I would go off some slippery slope, and just, it was so severe that I just felt like I was going to lose the ability to have a normal life or a good life or a happy life. And I felt like at the time, the way mental health issues were being viewed, it felt like a life sentence, and like you're genetically defective and you just need to be medicated. And I didn't want to be a defective person. I didn't want a life sentence as a mental health patient. I didn't want that to be my identity. So I started searching at a pretty young age for something different. And I did an undergrad in cultural anthropology. And then I ended up doing a PhD in medical anthropology. I actually don't have a PhD in functional medicine. I have a PhD, not an MD. The functional medicine piece came later. But I was in this joint program with UCSF Medical School and UC Berkeley, and I was really interested because of some of my own health issues and how different cultures were dealing with health issues. And one of the things I kept seeing when I would read ethnographies, like stories, things anthropologists would write about different cultures, these detailed accounts of living with these people, what I kept noticing over and over again were people mentioning that as they would visit these populations often over their whole career, like over decades, what they were noticing is that as people started adopting an industrialized lifestyle, they were starting to get the same diseases and they were starting to develop the same mental health issues. And it dawned on me, you know what? We're not genetically defective when we have mental health issues. This is a cultural problem. We're not living in alignment with our evolutionary biology. This isn't how we evolved to live, and our bodies are so distressed, they don't feel safe. And the words that have come to me is that anxiety and other mental health issues as well, and also other chronic illness symptoms, anxiety is a natural response to an unnatural environment. And we've normalized this toxic culture that's trying to dominate nature, override nature, instead of working with the intelligence of nature, which is how we've we've almost like romanticized indigenous cultures because we know they had to work in lockstep with nature to survive and thrive, right? And so I oftentimes will, say, oh, that's so great how Native Americans use the whole buffalo, or how this group, shamans did this and this, and we'll kind of, when we know that they had access to information about how the natural world works that we've lost touch with, and we'll have a fascination with it. But then there's like this disconnect in how we're living our lives, and that we're making these daily choices we may not realize are hurting ourselves and contributing not only to mental health issues, but to chronic disease and also accelerated aging. And we have this culture where we think it's normal to become disabled as we age, which it isn't. It's common, but it's not normal. And so I was talking to Audrey yesterday, and I was mentioning how she had brought up how not only does the United States have the shortest lifespan of all industrialized, privileged countries, but we actually have the shortest disability-free lifespan. And the rate of cognitive decline, like brain degeneration that's happening, and a lot of people who end up with anxiety and depression caused by inflammation in the brain, actually, as they age, have a higher risk of cognitive decline. And so it's all connected, right? So I think what I'm wanting to just share is that we have a lot more control over our mental and physical health than we're led to believe. And I think looking to the intelligence of nature, looking to a lot of indigenous wisdom at the intersection of cutting edge science, because there's all this science that's showing the same things, but it's not really being offered in mainstream medicine.
I find it so interesting that you add that little piece on, not just that we're losing life expectancy against all the industrialized, wealthy countries on the globe, and we have been since 1981, but your little addition of disease-free life expectancy being shortest of all of those countries as well is absolutely shocking. And both of those measures have to tell us that we're doing something wrong. I think, where I came from, the study of all of this was from the quantum physics point of view, which it ends up being all of these approaches are related on that level, because the quantum physicists of old, that's Einstein and Niels Bohr and those kind of guys back in 1900, proved, at least to most people's satisfaction, that there is no solid in the universe. Everything is energetically based. They named these little tiny packets of energy quanta. And so everything see, feel, touch, taste, etc., everything is a combination of these energy packets that condense an infinite variety. And that has significant application to our health in all levels, not just mental, not just physical, but in all levels, because what medicine does not recognize, mainstream medicine, I should say, is that we're energetically based beings, whether we're sick or healthy. And that has implications for every state of our body and our mind. So I love the fact that you're adding significant details, Traci, to my understanding of the quantum basis of reality. So tell us tell us about your journey getting here. You've already said that you worked in your father's office, you had early exposure to psychiatric medicine, then you suffered a debilitating
Yeah.
anxiety. And so that led you into your education, as you've described. And then how did you begin to practice, or how do you practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I had a panic attack and it didn't just stop there. I had debilitating anxiety on and off for so many years. And you know, I had experiences traveling to other countries, Mexico, Spain. I lived in Spain a couple years. I lost 50 pounds without going on a diet, living in Spain. And I realized, again, we have a cultural issue. This isn't individual biology, right? And so at some point, my mom ended up having Crohn's disease. And this is why I was working on my doctoral. I was doing my doctoral, my dissertation research in Cuba. And that's a whole other area where there were such huge mental health issues there too. And my mom had Crohn's, and that she was told that she had to have her colon removed. She had to have a permanent colectomy, that she would just have to poop in a plastic bag the rest of her life. And that was inevitable because her, sorry to be gross, but they said her intestines looked like ground meat. And she was bleeding so much. And it was just like, that's just what you were supposed to do. And so I was like, no, not my mom. Like, no, I refuse. I refuse to accept this reality. And this is going to be a pattern you might see in my life and in my practice. I refuse to accept this reality. And so anyway, I applied a lot of my intuition, what I'd learned. I was learning, you know, as a medical anthropologist. I did a lot of research, and I came to the conclusion that if we could get my mom to maybe move the needle on how she was eating, because she had had eating disorders of overeating and struggled with her weight for years. My dad had he was a psychiatrist, but he had severe trauma he hadn't dealt with in mental illness and could be very verbally abusive. And so she had been enduring all this, you know, and, you know, poor self-care, you know, psychologically abusive marriage, you know, and her body couldn't take it anymore. And I had the sense that if we could move the needle on that, get her some help, if she would be open to it, but she had previously not been open to it, but she finally was, because she was on the verge of death. Literally, she almost died 3 times from Crohn's. Once was from the Crohn's itself, from bleeding. The second time was a side effect from the immunosuppressant. She got a little cut in her finger and almost died from it because her immune system was so suppressed. And then the third time was a side effect from another immunosuppressant that started causing a scarring of her lung tissue. And then when she stopped the medication, that stopped progressing. So she almost died 3 times, but 2 out of 3 was from the medications, not from the disease. So anyway, long story short, with just diet and a few supplements, we got her quiescent. They don't say remission with autoimmunity, they say quiescent. So she became quiescent, didn't have Crohn's. So as of 2004, she was quiescent. She got to keep her colon, which doctor said was impossible. And it's 2024, she's 83 and she's never had a relapse. And she's not on any immunosuppressants and she has her colon intact, like I just said. So that was a game changer.
How many years has she lived then, free of
It's
this?
been 20 years.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
So
astonishing.
it is astonishing, except to me, it's not. To me, it's a logical. So the thing is, and now I've gotten really, I love working with people with autoimmunity for obvious reasons. And there's a connection between autoimmunity and mental health issues, because mental health issues stress the body in such a way. The nervous system and the immune system are in lockstep. They share physiological structures, like the vagus nerve modulates your immune system and modulates your nervous system. So they're not separate at all. We talk about all these things like they're separate. They're absolutely not separate. I was telling you, Audrey, yesterday, we don't even have the language in English to describe the reality of what we are. We're not mind and body. We're mind body. Like, we don't even have a word for that. We need a word. Someone come up with one.
You need a word.
We need a word.
It's reflective of the industry that is, maybe all sciences are over specialized. As if you
Right.
segment, you can, in your case, look at the mental side and the physical side. But you know, in my case, where I was coming at it from quantum physics point of view, um, the electricity, energy, vibrating energy, that is the province of engineers and physicists, period, the end. Doctors aren't supposed to study that, and they don't. So it's a very interesting effect that's happening here, this over specialization, and that's probably exactly what you don't see in the more primitive, for the want of a better word, cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. Pre-industrialized is kind of a little the more polite way, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. And
Thank you.
so, so, yeah, you're right. And, you know, I like to say people get carved up like a Christmas turkey and sent, we're going to send this part to this specialist, this specialist, this specialist, but we're a part of a unified field of frequency. And there is no separation, not only within our own cellular structures and organs in our own bodies, but like even between bodies, and even where we think our bodies end and empty space begins. That's kind of an illusion of our brain, right? So
That's what Einstein died trying to prove, the unified field theory. He had that exact sense that everything in the universe is connected. And I think we all have, you know, small, strange occurrences that make us stop and think, wow, I wonder if that's an example of it. Like you're thinking about someone and the phone rings. I was walking down the hill with my dogs and I was thinking about, I hadn't seen a hawk in a long time. I love hawks for a whole bunch of weird reasons. And one landed in the tree right in front of me. And I thought, wow, is that the power of my brain, or is that just our connection, or what is that? But anyway, it's thrilling that you're looking into all of that.
yeah, and I don't doubt that there's a connection between your consciousness and consciousness of the hawk as part of the whole pool of consciousness of existence. I just wonder, did you think, I haven't seen a hawk in a long time because you could feel it coming, or did you call the hawk, or like did you guys just draw, you know, I don't know the exact mechanisms, but I've just seen too much and lived too much. And I've gotten to the point where in my own, I later had, well, my mom ended up, we got her squared away, but that changed my thinking. I was like, oh, when I went ahead and finished my PhD in medical anthropology, but I was like, I don't think I'm on the right track. And people started asking me when they saw my mom almost dying and then saw her thriving, they were just like, what happened? And so people started coming to me and asking for help. And I didn't plan to do this. I didn't plan functional medicine. Functional medicine, like it just, I was guided into this reality. And so I ended up with some more health issues. I eventually ended up, actually not super long ago, I lived in a house that had peeling lead paint and toxic mold. And I ended up getting very sick. And then I ended up, I did have a partner who had Lyme, and I didn't know at the time it could be spread through saliva if you're immunosuppressed. Mold is an immunosuppressant, lead, heavy metals are immunosuppressants. So because I was immunosuppressed, I also ended up with Lyme on top of,
Oh my
and
God.
my kidneys were failing, my brain was failing, my vision was failing. I was having chest pains. I had rashes. I couldn't sleep. I was shaking all the time. I had a tremor. I had tinnitus. I mean, I was just like, I felt like my health felt like it was pouring through my hands like water, and I was trying desperately to grab on and I couldn't. That's the feeling I kept getting. I felt like I was drowning and calling for help. And like, I was living in Hawaii at the time, and there are no environmental illness, there are no doctors specializing in environmental illness there. And it was super complicated to get insurance coverage off island. Anyway, it just got very messy. But it was a wake up call. But what was the first symptom when I was living in that house that something was wrong? Because mind you, at the time, I was meditating 2 hours a day. I was eating like the perfect diet. I was getting plenty of sleep, protecting my circadian rhythms. I had done all this trauma healing, and I had like done so much work, and I had such healthy relationships and friendships. Like I was doing all the things. And I would wake up in the morning with such severe anxiety. I was like, I would wake up in the morning and I was like, this again? I thought I got rid of you, old friend. And so I ended up, you know, with anxiety came back, and it with a vengeance. And I was doing all the things, and they would make me feel better for a while, like meditating and breath work. It would help. It sure helped with my nervous system. And I took a bunch of supplements and stuff, and that helped. But it was meditate. I can't tell you how many things I have figured out for myself and for clients, when I'm meditating, not thinking about that stuff, I'm just doing my practice regularly. And then I'll get up, I'll be done, I'll be standing up. And then I just, boom, I get a message like, go research the connection between urolithin A and, the mitochondria of the heart, and, the ability to repair because I had a client who was supposed to have a heart transplant, and she had been through chemo and radiation. It had damaged the mitochondria of her heart, so she had stiff heart syndrome. And so her heart was like an old rubber band. It couldn't expand and contract, and her heart function was down. Her ejection fraction was like 20. It was really bad. She almost drowned in her own fluid. She had a defibrillator vest. They were going to put in a defibrillator, and then they're going to put her on a list for a heart transplant. And it wasn't just the urolithin A, which helps repair the mitochondria, especially in muscle tissue. It wasn't just that, which I did look up on PubMed, and there was research confirming what had come to me. But I did a whole system with her. I did my whole program with her, and she ended up, it took time, but within 3 months, her ejection fraction was up to 40. So any of you, if you're in the medical field, that's like a jaw dropper. And then now she has normal heart function. She didn't end up with a defibrillator or a heart transplant. She's fine. But she did it all with self-care and supplements, with working.
And your help.
Well, yeah.
So I think you answered your question. I think the mechanism is you were thinking about it, you asked for it, and it came to you. That connection answer.
And not when I was asking about it. What I noticed is we ask, give it space, and it comes when you're not reaching for it. Kind of like when you can't remember something, you're like, what was I going to say? If you stop trying to remember, it'll come to you. We have to go more receptive, and we have a culture that's very aggressive, like go out and make things happen and get it and conquer it and attack it and force it. And we have this culture where we talk about, we're going to fight cancer, fight disease, the war on drugs, where everything's a metaphor of war. Nothing has ever healed in war. War doesn't heal things. And we need nurture. And one of the things that a lot of people struggle with in illness is becoming more receptive, more still, more curious. Simple things. Some of the more gentle, simple things actually will heal someone faster than something aggressive. Now, I will say there are times when an aggressive intervention is needed to save a life. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that can't be the only way we approach things. And so anyway, I ended up sick myself. And one of the reasons I had been kind of a generalist for a long time. And then I was meditating. I have something called my magical morning sunshine ritual, weather permitting, or I try to do earthing and sun and, breath work, meditation, and then visualization or mental rehearsals. And I had, I like to say download. I know that sounds really new age, but anyway, I got this really clear message that I needed to help people with anxiety, because this was like kind of on the tail end of the pandemic. And I just was seeing the mental health crisis go through the roof. And and what came to me in this message was anxiety is just a symptom of all these other things I help people with anyway, like gut health, like self-care, like immune system regulation, nervous system regulation, all the things I was already doing to help people. Because what I noticed was people come to me with a digestive issue, an autoimmune issue, or a hormone issue, whatever the thing was, weight loss, whatever. They would come to me and they would just say, you know what? My anxiety's gone. You know what? My depression's gone. You know what? I feel happy. I feel at peace. So I was like, well, I'm going to turn that around, because people don't understand that if you have depression or anxiety, or like your brain doesn't say ouch, like you put your hand on a hot stove, you say ouch, right? Your brain says ouch with anxiety, with depression, with brain fog, with fatigue. That's how your brain says ouch.
Yeah.
And so your brain is saying ouch for a reason. And it usually is tied to a handful of things that are the result of living in a toxic world, a toxic environment, like toxic chemically, toxic in terms of, contamination, toxic chemicals, but also emotionally toxic too. We don't have enough nurture. We're not prioritizing nurture.
Right. I have an MD, a medical doctor, coming on in a couple months, who has the same exact approach that you're talking about. He said he went into psychiatry because he understood that it was the basis of every condition in the body, every condition in the mind, every condition in the body, and they're so closely related. he finds that medicine tries to separate things that shouldn't be separated. So here's another practitioner with a regular old MD degree who is going to come on in a couple of months to talk to us about what he's doing in that field, which is very similar to what you're doing here. Very similar, and it's exciting. So let's say if you had to do it all over again, Traci, what would you do differently in your practice, in your profession, in your life?
I probably would have gone to functional medicine a lot faster, but I have to say, man, that anthropology perspective really, it's tricky because the medical anthropology perspective, it taught me, I was in a critical medical anthropology program, and we studied the politics of science and the politics of knowledge and the politics of medicine. We were taught to look behind the kimono of the medical system and think in a way that it, and then that I cut myself off, but just think in new ways. And then also all of the ethnographies I read, and also like the work I did in Cuba and the work I did in Oaxaca and the visits to Guatemala and the experiencing real people, watching them have this identity crisis of being an indigenous person, wanting to preserve your culture, but you want to participate in this modern world with everybody else. You want to have your iPhone and the toilet paper and the electricity and the Coca-Cola and all the alcohol and the cigarettes and the caffeine and and watching these people just end up so sick, and so I don't know, I wish I could do both. Like I really probably would have liked to go back and do something more directly functional medicine related sooner.
Can you just for all of us, our benefit, can you just
define it?
Functional medicine? Yes,
Yes,
please.
thank you. Actually, I meant to sooner. There's so many little avenues we can explore here. So functional medicine, it's a movement of doctors and scientists started by a doctor named Dr. Jeffrey Bland. His name is Bland. He's not bland. He's like such a kind-hearted soul. He's such a beautiful human, so humble. I got to meet him recently, and he's just brilliant and beautiful. And so he started this at the Cleveland Clinic, and it's a movement of doctors and scientists, and now practitioners of all kinds, nutritionists, acupuncturists, health coaches, all patient advocates. I mean, it goes on, mental health experts, therapists, psychiatrists. It's this movement of health professionals that is trying to find the underlying causes or the root causes of illness instead of just addressing, the symptoms or covering up symptoms. Huh?
Symptoms, exactly.
Yeah. So it's about, because there's symptoms. Anxiety is a symptom. By the way, anxiety is not a disorder. It's a symptom. Depression isn't a disorder. It's a symptom, just like a headache, just like aches and pains. Those are all symptoms. They're not, we call them disorders to give them a billing code for insurance, but they're not disorders, they're symptoms. I have yet to have someone go through my program with chronic anxiety and not have their anxiety either go from like a 10 or an 8 to like a 2 or maybe a 4 at the worst, or just to 0. And I've had people who they've been anxious since they were children. They don't have any memory of being anxiety free. And they finally, in one of their crises is when they go through and it's gone and they're just like, who am I now? Like, who is this? Like, and a lot of people think it's, well, if I've had it my whole life, it must be genetic, or if people in my family have mental health issues, it must be genetic, but that's not true. We learn habits, we learn emotional patterning, and there are some genetic predispositions that make you more sensitive and prone, but they're not deterministic. So, yeah. So
interesting that you're seeking the cause, which
right.
I find in my own personal experiences with, mainstream traditional medicine, there's almost no talk of underlying cause and getting that cause and reversing that cause. And it is so very frustrating because all it does is sort of prolong the agony and cost a hell of a lot more.
It's more expensive, less effective.
Yeah, it's just so we treat symptoms. That's common. We find the word cure in mainstream medicine used very seldomly. And so I guess we've just become habituated to managing symptoms, which in the case of mental health is you won't know you're depressed or anxious if you have enough drugs in you to just mellow you out. So,
And they often will have horrible side effects and stop working. Like they'll work. People, psychiatrists will tell you this. They have to change meds constantly because I call my business inner genius health. It's the genius of nature. It's the genius of what we are. It's the intelligence of nature in every cell of our human cells and our microbe cells, our DNA. That intelligence, that's what can heal us when we work with and not against it. And it's just really sad that we're being taught to lower our standards and to expect very little from our inner genius. We're like, well, you're defective, so here, take this. And it's really sad. And one thing that just gets me like, this has happened with my mom. My mom, she always asks, what's the root cause? What she knows this, right? So I've watched her ask so many doctors, well, what causes this? What's the underlying cause of this? And they either say genetics or aging. Like,
yeah, like this is
well,
normal.
I'm like, oh, so you're genetically defective and old, so you can just expect this to happen to you. And I was like, well, explain the blue zones, explain all the people who, who like not just, it's just such BS, it's not true. We
Right.
have, and a lot of people, I've had clients come to me in their 80s and they get huge improvements and they think, oh, well, at my age, can I get better? Is there any point? Well, yeah, there is a point. Because
Yeah.
you're like, anyway, that's one of the things that gets me all riled up is, is putting limiting beliefs, is putting these medical hexes on people. And so much as possible, but you have to, if you want to heal your anxiety, if you want to heal any mental health issue, if you want to heal any chronic condition, cardiovascular disease, cancer, anything, autoimmunity, if you want to heal anything, you have to heal your life. And that's why I see illness as an opportunity for transformation. And you can have transformation at any age. So illness is an invitation from your inner genius to stop being a vibrational match or an energetic match for your illness. And so that's why I put a program together, because even functional medicine doctors or naturopaths who I love, I'm part of a community of functional medicine practitioners that's amazing. It's like 1,500 of us at least. And it's such a supportive, loving community. And what I see even naturopaths and functional medicine doctors struggling with is they don't have enough time with, even if they have, your regular conventional doctors are going to have about 8 to 15 minutes, maybe 30 with a patient. I mean, how deep of a dive can you do into someone's case with that amount of time? Like what kind of a detective are you going to be, right? And that's how the system's set up. And then you might get a naturopath who spends a whole hour, or they might even spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on your intake. But then your follow-ups are going to be kind of shorter. And then in terms of getting in the nitty gritty of like, what do I buy? And how do I read labels? And how do I I can't sleep. How do I get myself to sleep? Or my hormones are a mess, or I'm in like a toxic relationship with my spouse and it's affecting my health and I can't get better because I don't feel supported, or we're real humans. And so if we don't take a 360-degree view of our healing, then we're going to get stuck wherever we're not looking, wherever we don't want to look. That's where you're going to be held back. And so that's why I created a program. I think you asked how I work with people. So I have 3 pillars. So there's the functional medicine part where I recommend labs that are ordered through a physician program. So I order labs and I work with supplements and things like that. But I also help people with their lifestyle. But your lifestyle isn't just diet and exercise. Like those words are so cliche, we're numb to them. It's your daily thoughts and actions. It's your daily habits that are both mental and habitual, behavioral. And yes, that includes food. Yes, that includes movement. Yes, that includes sleep. Yes, it includes relationships. It also includes your physical environment. I was being poisoned by my own home. In my defense, I had one of the most incredible views in Hawaii, like of the Mokulua Islands off of Oahu. It was stunning. And I couldn't leave, but that I wish I'd listened. But my intuition told me early on, something in this house is making you sick besides mold. And I wouldn't listen. And I wasn't listening to my inner genius. And that was a huge lesson. So there's the lifestyle part, the physical and social and emotional environment. So there's all those pieces. But then the third pillar is going to be your nervous system. We can rewire, we can recondition our nervous systems that will actually help modulate our immune systems, make our immune systems. They will actually slow aging, even reverse the clock on aging, and create resilience and more joy and happiness, and also more ability to deal with the hard times when they come, because they will, because we're humans on a planet, right? So what I've noticed is if you just do the function, the pills and the labs, and you don't deal with the other two, you're never going to get better. If you just do one of those pillars, you're going to miss the other two. You're not going to get resolution. You might get a little better, but you're not going to get full results. And even if you just do 2 out of 3, you're not going to get the results. You have to do all 3 of those parts, or you're not going to get where you want to go.
So you come back to the unified field.
Yes.
Einstein was definitely onto something, as we all know. He was brilliant, and he was convinced that he could prove mathematically the way he did with energy equals mass times velocity squared. He was sure a simple equation would show that everything in the universe is interconnected. And so that's exactly what you're saying. You have to deal with the entire picture. It sounds
Right.
it sounds even to me, it sounds really daunting. It's like, where do I start? Who do I start with? How do I think about these 3 pillars? What's the most fundamental? Where would I start looking first? And I would love for you to answer that question for us.
Well, that's why I created a program, because it takes people through, it's like 3 to 6 months, depending on the person's pace. And it takes you through, and it's kind of it's a launching you thing. It's not like you do all that in 3 to 6 months. You get educated, and I do a lot of mindset work. Like, I help people change their thinking so that their thinking aligns with the outcomes they want. And that's the first roadblock for people, is thoughts. That's the first problem. And then after that, we work on the nervous system, because the nervous system, when you get that regulated, then you're able to do the other parts better. And then, and I'm really a big proponent of meditation. Even if you think you, quote, suck at meditation, everyone can meditate. You just need the right tools. You need to give your mind a job, and you need to learn to feel your body. And that's something everyone needs as a skill set. I really firmly believe that every human on the planet, just like you need to brush your teeth and floss your teeth and drink water and breathe air and feed yourself and get sleep, you need to meditate, because that gives you access to dimensions of yourself that we're walking through the world, numbing out and tuning out, it's the most powerful part of what we are. And it also makes us more aware. It expands our awareness. It gives us access to wisdom, our wisdom brain. Sometimes I get flustered trying to explain the value of meditation to people, because it's so huge what it changes that I don't have words for what it is. And it's a process. But I have a meditation that I give away for free on my website. If you just go to innergeniushealth.com, or you just find my name and you stalk me, and you can find my website. It's easy, because my name's spelled so weird. But there's a meditation technique that was designed by Peter Levine and Maggie Phillips. I added my own spin on it. It's called a pendulation technique. And it basically, not only does it give your mind a job, it helps you go into a deep state of relaxation. It helps with anxiety. It can help you get into a euphoric, peaceful state, like deeply pleasurable state. And it gives your mind a job. So anyone can do it. Even if you really struggle with focus, or your mind's all over the place, like anyone can do it. People with ADHD can do it. And it helps with physical pain. It helps with emotional pain. It's like an all-in-one printer, scanner, copier, instant pot, or something like that. It does all these different things. And I feel one of the reasons I put that out front for people is, once you experience that, I call it experiencing your self-healing powers, or experiencing your inner genius. Like, when you learn, oh, I can just use my focus, my internal focus, and my breathing to actually completely change my state of consciousness and my brain waves and my cellular biology, then wow, like, that's cool. What else is there?
So that is your specific method for getting into that meditative state for people who struggle with meditation, which I think a lot of us do. It's so different to, American society.
Right.
That's all available on your website, called the innergenius.com.
Yeah, innergeniushealth.com. Yeah.
Innergeniushealth.com.
So
So it's very specific. It walks you into it. So
it's 15 minutes. It's an audio recording. people learn to do it. You do it for like 1 or 2 weeks every day. You will have it memorized. You won't need the recording anymore. You can learn to do it probably after 3 times, you'll know how to do it. So it's something you learn how to do. And it also helps with sleep. I have so many people, I discovered this by accident from my clients, that they were saying, hey, I was doing that. I call it a brain trick meditation because pendulation doesn't sound sexy, but anyway, I was noticing clients were doing this meditation, and then it was fixing their insomnia. Now, you can't have insomnia for reasons that won't help, but people were using it to fall asleep. They're using it to get back to sleep when they woke up. I mean, the things that people have been discovering this helps them with it just keeps expanding over time. So it's 15 minutes, it's worth 15 minutes to just get to like really come back to like a really nice baseline, nice regulated baseline. And again, if you have pain, if you have chronic pain, it was designed to help with physical pain, but it works with everything. And because it's all connected, because it's not separate. And that's the tricky thing about like marketing is like, you have a niche and you say, I do this very narrow thing because you want to reach the people that are looking for the solution to that very narrow problem. But really that pain point is a doorway into like something much more expansive that returns you to yourself. Like what I really love watching people do is go through a structured, supported journey that has to be joyful and it has to feel good, and you have to get wins along the way or else you're not going to keep going. I hate willpower. I think willpower is dumb. No one can last on willpower. You have to fall in love with your life. You have to transform your life in a way you are so in love with what you're doing that you wouldn't want to do anything else. If you're using willpower to make changes or sustain changes, you will fail, not because you're defective or weak, but because you're human and it goes against your inner genius. It goes against your biology. So you have to be in love with it. You have to enjoy it. It may be some work here and there. You will have to get uncomfortable to get the wins sometimes, but you'll also get to be really joyful and experience a lot of pleasure. And what people learn along the way is a lot of what they thought isn't, like they think they have to starve themselves to be a healthy weight, or they think they have to give up pleasure to be healthy, or they think everything has to be really hard, or they have to battle themselves. And usually if you're battling yourself, it's because you're looking at it from an angle where you're pushing against yourself instead of working with yourself. So it's easier than people think, and it's more fun than people think. So
that sounds amazing. Just switching the subject for a moment here. When we spoke, you said something that I found very, very interesting, which was we were talking about the problems with traditional medical education in this country. And you said something like, medical education is grueling. And at the end of that grueling
dehumanizing,
they are left with a quote unquote, this is small toolbox of what they can use, what they must not use, what they can use, which is controlled by the licensing and the certifications and recertifications that all doctors have to go through. All mainstream medical doctors have to go through. And I found that small toolbox just kind of catches my brain. And I wonder if you could address that a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, I was like, I have so many friends who are medical doctors, and the words I use, it's a dehumanizing process. It really is. It's dehumanizing. And then when they graduate, they're all herded into an auditorium. Most medical schools do this. They're put in an auditorium and a lawyer gets on stage and tells them all the ways they could lose their license, be sued, blah, 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 all the horrible things that could happen if they step outside the line. So I call it the guns to your head. They have all these guns to their head, the insurance companies, the lawyers, the, threat of lawsuit, threat of just, losing their license, all this stuff. It is stressful to be a doctor. The problem isn't the doctors, it's higher up. And then the toolbox they're given, because, as you know, Audrey, we have a pharmaceutical biased healthcare system. I'm not against all pharmaceuticals. I don't think there shouldn't be a pharmaceutical industry. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should not be like, oh, you can have black and white and then paint a rainbow with black and white. No, you can't do that. You need all the colors, right? And so we should have a medical system that is open to evidence-based protocols of all kinds, not just the ones you can patent. But when we follow the money,
well said. Not just the ones you can patent.
Yeah, if you can't patent it, then it's not important, right? So, and also biotech, you can patent biotech, and you actually can patent natural sub molecules if the extraction process is unique or whatever, right? Right now, there are pharmaceutical companies are actually trying to breed strains of bacteria probiotic. They're trying to dabble in probiotics. So on one side of their mouth, they're putting down all the natural stuff like, boo, take all the antibiotics. But then out of the other, you know, in the R&D side, in the research and development side, they're actually trying to figure out how to pharmaceuticalize probiotics, which could be messy because the intelligence of nature is infinite. And no matter how smart and technologically advanced we are, we're still looking at reality through a pinhole, really, relatively. And so that's why I feel like sometimes we get lost because we're trying to understand more than what we're capable of. It's fun to explore. I love science. I love science. I'm a huge nerd, but I also have a certain humility for the limits of human understanding. And sometimes we need to do things in a way that works with the whole, that we use the whole plant, or we use, you know what I'm saying? Like if you look at so many illnesses and you try to discern what works and what doesn't work, it's almost always if you work with the whole of nature. For example, acid reflux, and I know we need to do Q&A. I heard that, got that message, Jesse. But acid reflux, we used to think, oh, that's because you have too much stomach acid. It's, you know, that's, you should just suppress your stomach acid. Now we know that that causes bone loss. We know it causes colon cancer, autoimmunity. It just goes on and on and on, cognitive decline, because you need acid to break down food. And what we've discovered, 90% of people with reflux actually have low stomach acid, not high. That's the whole other ball of wax. But the point is, when the deeper our understanding of how nature works and the big picture of nature and how things are interconnected, then the more obvious the solutions become that work. And what ends up happening is we were talking about this yesterday, Audrey, how the most brilliant solutions, the most effective solutions, we miss them because they're hiding in plain sight. They are so simple and so basic that we miss them.
Too simple and not profitable.
Not patentable, not complex. And you know, it's funny because there are all these fun gadgets. I love biohacking and all these gadgets out there. You can go spend thousands of dollars on all kinds of equipment to do things that you could also just go out in the sun, or you could also, you know, put your feet on the earth for a few minutes if it's not like icy snow. Or, you know, there's so many things. We could sleep more. We could, you know, there are all these things. We could eat better. We could, you know, we could meditate. We could breathe better. We could change our thoughts. There's so many things that are free that we can do. But a lot of times, unless we spend a lot of money on something, we don't think it's valuable, or
right.
we don't want to invest in getting help with, you know, I see a lot of people are like, if insurance won't cover it, I don't want it. But guess what? If you want to fix something, it's unlikely the insurance will cover it, unless it's like a heart valve. If it's a heart valve, great, you know, go through the medical system. But if you're trying to repair autoimmunity, chronic degenerative disease, you know, mental health issues, digestive issues, the toolbox is tiny. I talked to a gastroenterologist. He said, you know, he said, in all my medical training, he said, I never learned how to recondition a gut, how to restore function. That's functional medicine, is about restoring function. I never learned how to restore function to a digestive tract. I learned how to block acid. I learned I can scope you. I can give you antibiotics, antiparasitics, antiacid, whatever. I can do all that, but I can't actually fix a digestive system. I was never taught to do that. He's like, I have to send
That's that old word, cure again. That's an old word, cure and cause, which is sort of lightly used in our mainstream. So let's turn to whatever questions we may have from people out there
Sure.
looking at us.
The first question that we have is, what's your take, Traci, on terahertz radiation machines or a Healy machine, frequency machines?
Yeah, so I'm more familiar with Healy machines. The thing with some of these machines is I actually feel like in principle, there's no reason they can't be effective. What I've seen is mixed results from people who've used them. And I'm not clear on that, except for I do feel like there's a synergy between intention and results. So I don't think it's all placebo. If you use, like, I also like, why can't I think of it? It's the mat. Help me here. Why can't I think of it? It's a mat and it improves circulation. I'm
It's
blanking out on it.
it's not red light healing. Are you talking
No,
about?
I love red light. I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of red light.
Yeah.
Healing, what was the other one, Jesse?
Terahertz radiation?
Terahertz. So I actually don't know about the terahertz radiation machine. I know zero about that. The Healy, I know people who've used a Healy and they really swear by it and feel, but you can't use a Healy and then eat a bunch of crap and be stressed out and expect it to fix you, right? So I feel like some of these machines, these PEMF machines, are very powerful and helpful. But if we're sabotaging ourselves through our daily thoughts and actions, then they're not, they can give you a boost, but I don't think they're going to fix everything. And the thing with some of these devices is because there's a lack of funding to really research them, it's a little tricky, like to get data on their efficacy, because we're putting money into what's patentable. And you know, some of these technologies have trademarks and things, but it's a whole different ballgame in terms of funding. And if someone knows more than I do about how well funded these are, let me know. But my understanding is they're not that well funded.
Well, while we're on this subject of pulsed frequencies, which is really the basis of the science in my book,
Right.
which I have seen cure.
You have your dad.
I've seen the cure leukemia, so I know that it works. Now, my dad was very open-minded when he was diagnosed, and he went with me to my vet, and my vet gave him what he needed to use the correct frequency for his disease. So I've seen the miracle of it. And actually, I want to say, while we're on this subject, Edna Tunney, who is the CEO, president of Resonant Light Technology, who is the manufacturer of the vibrational frequency machine that I happen to own, is going to be our guest in March. She's going to be
Nice.
next month. So she will be a wealth of knowledge about the pulsed frequencies that are, I think they're out there in a whole bunch of different forms.
Yeah.
But she's got one of the real legitimate companies, and as I say, I've seen the miracles it can create.
Right. I totally agree. So I want to be clear. I guess I feel like on one hand, I can't endorse a product that I haven't seen data on, but anecdotally, all these pulse, you know, or PEMF or pulse frequency devices, I've seen people have those be part of their success story.
Mhm.
And people who feel like it was a huge part of why they succeeded. And there's another device that I think is really powerful, and it's called your consciousness. And I've used this device to stop mast cell activation. If you know what mast cell activation is, it's a part of mast cells are all part of your immune system. And when they activate, it can cause horrendous symptoms, pain, GI issues, brain issues, hormone issues. I mean, it goes on and on. Mast cell activation is no fun. It's horrible. It's usually triggered by infection or mold toxicity or something like that. That's why I got it. And one day I sat and I went into a meditative state. I was actually in this beautiful place in Hawaii, this like healing sanctuary place on the North Shore, and it was gorgeous, and it was at night in the moonlight. And I sat there and it was spontaneous. Something told me, go into meditation and visualize your mast cells regulating themselves, going from like haywire to regulated. And my brain generated this beautiful visual. And I kind of know what mast cells look like, but it wouldn't have mattered if I could have made them look like anything, hockey pucks, and it wouldn't have mattered. But, and I basically just kind of with my consciousness, loved them, told them I knew they could do it, that I knew they knew where the off switch was. I even saw like a cartoon off switch. And I went into the state of euphoria, and then something like changed. And then I had this thought, like, am I healing myself? And then this doubter was like, probably not, you know? And so like, I was questioning myself as it was happening. And I just went into the state, I was tingling all over, went to the state of euphoria. And then it was just like, it was so beautiful. And it was just like, it was powerful. And then I was like, and at that time, if I ate any high histamine food, which is a lot of foods, I would have an instant reaction. I went to the potluck table, started eating all this stuff, had no reaction to any of it, went home for like, you know, I have to still be careful. I can't overdo it, but like, I had a single event healing experience just using my consciousness. So I am supportive of these devices. I love infrared, whether it's sauna. I love red light therapy, huge on red light therapy. That was a big part of my healing. Also cold and heat, like saunas and cold. If you're like, I hate cold, you're missing out. Like I hated cold too. And then I had this friend who said, you have to make friends with the micro discomforts of cold. And I was so sick. And I got in the ice cold Yuba River with a dear friend of mine. And I just came out. I went in shaking with a tremor and ringing in my ears. And I could barely keep my balance climbing over the rocks. I felt like just, like I felt like I had arthritis. I was in pain all over my body. My brain was fuzzy. And after spending time in that ice cold water, I got out and I was crystal clear. I felt normal for the first time, like since I'd been really sick, and it lasted about 2 hours and then it wore off. But I went from I hate cold to cold is my friend and it can heal me. So
let's go to another question, Jesse. I think we should move on here. Do we have another question?
What do you suggest to change this allopathic medical crisis?
that's a huge,
What do we suggest to change it?
the allopathic crisis. I mean, right now we're in a consumer economy, a consumer-driven economy, right? And I think just the more people that speak out openly, or just, who made that, whose quote was that instead of trying to fix a broken system, to just create a better system. I'm butchering it. There's a really good quote. I wish I could remember it, but basically, I think we need to just keep developing, keep supporting the science that's looking outside the box. There's so much cutting edge science out there that's becoming independently funding. There are even some, NSF funds that are funding some of this independent research. A lot of countries that can't afford a lot of biotech, like Africa, and not Japan. Japan does a lot of alternative stuff, but they have more money. But Africa and India, there's a lot of research coming out of Africa and India and Latin America. So I feel like there's this groundswell happening. It's not as fast as I want it to be, but it's happening. And I think we are every one of us is voting with our actions. If you support functional medicine practitioners, or you support, you share what you let your doctors know that you want a more open-minded approach, or you demand more emotional intelligence, or you fire your doctor if they're condescending or a jerk to you, or like we all collectively are going to change this. And it's going to be with what we buy, with who we hire, with what we say, with how we educate ourselves, and also just with our own consciousness, with our own frequency.
I would like to address this question as well. There's sort of 3 takeaways that I think about. And the first one is, yes, there is a groundswell. There is a wave. There's massive dissatisfaction with our very, very expensive and somewhat less than optimal medical system. So the first thing is you have to learn to listen to yourself. And I think a lot of what you've been saying, Traci, is exactly that. No one knows as well as you do what's going on in your mind and your body. And then the professionals that you choose to consult with, use them as a source for answers to your questions, and question and question and question. The second thing is always get multiple opinions, especially if your situation is serious and or the offered solution is invasive and serious itself. And so you'll have to spend a little time researching, as well as listening, researching, and then be your toughest advocate. I want to say that self-advocacy would be finding ways, and I don't have any off the top of my head, to demand that our government, whose responsibility is regulatory oversight, demand that our government transparently begin to share real regulatory oversight. And that means demand to see how medical schools are being supported in enormous ways of funding from the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. In fact, one Harvard MD said recently on a research binge I was on that 80% of most medical schools' operating budget is straight from the drug companies. Now, we can all see the obvious conflict of interest there. In other words, there's people out there talking, and again, Harvard Medical has a lot of people saying controversial things, that doctors are being trained to dispense drugs. That's the way the medical training is going. So anyway, there's a lot there's, for example, Germany has a very transparent system of analyzing new drugs before they go on the market, making drug testing completely independent from the company who developed the drug and available to the public. And not all of us would be able to read that and understand it, but there are plenty of people out there that could. So we need to start sort of raising our voices when it comes to politicians who are also part of the problem, not enforcing the regulatory responsibilities they have. And yeah, and we just need to seek transparency. Wherever there's big money, it's going to be hard. And so none of this is going to be easy. But if all of us begin to share this movement of, we know there's something better out there and we're going to find it. And you vote with your dollars, as Traci said, go to your doctor. And again, if they're not on board with you asking a million questions, then find a better doctor.
Right.
And or find alternative people who know whatever the specialty is you're looking into. And look into all of them.
Yeah. And if you walk out of an appointment feeling like you were just talked to, like you were stupid or dumb or talked down to or treated like you were crazy, it is not you, it's them. Like you need to find someone else because
It's their lack of education.
yeah, they don't know. And sometimes it's a defense mechanism, but a lot of medical gaslighting is a term now. And it's, treating people like they're crazy when they question things. That's not okay. It's never okay. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism of a doctor. They're scared, or they're not sure, or whatever, or annoyed or stressed or frustrated, but go find someone else. And when people say, oh, this person's supposed to be the best in my town or whatever, who decided that they were the best because they won a popularity contest? Like, was the most popular person at your school the best person? Like, so just.
Yeah.
We do have one final question if you want to address it before we wrap up.
Sure. Was that Alfred's question?
Yes.
I saw that.
Yep. Do you want me to read it or?
I didn't see. I couldn't read it.
I don't see it.
Okay, Traci, have you had experience helping patients with peripheral neuropathy?
Neuropathy, yeah.
Neuropathy, thank you. Which I'm recently experiencing from taking last chance heavy antibiotics. $27,000 per month for 12 months equals $324,000 a year for pulmonary bacterium, oh my gosh, lots of big words, abscessus disease.
Okay, so that's the problem. That's a whole rabbit hole of, yes, I've worked with people with peripheral neuropathy. There are also some tools that, that chiropractors can use for improving circulation. Red light is really powerful for peripheral neuropathy. It's also your gut health and your nutrition. So, there can be a lot of nutritional imbalances, B vitamins that can get a little complex depending on genetics, but you have to have a digestive system that's working and absorbing well to get the nutrients, to have the circulation and, the nerve to stop the progression of nerve damage. Some people do get better. Some people are able to just stop the progression. Neuropathy sucks. I haven't had it, but I've watched my mom deal with it. Hers is a lot better. But she had some areas she didn't really want to change until it was really bad, like including movement and exercise and stuff like that. So it's a tricky one, but you can slow or stop the progression, and some people actually back up the truck and have, a huge improvement. And the onslaught, I feel so sad for your microbiome, Alfred, for that onslaught of antibiotics, because I can't believe they cost that much, but every time we treat something with antibiotics, you kill the beneficial microbes that are crucial to not just your immunity, but everything about we're made of more microbe cells than human cells. We get more genetic information from our microbes. I'm glad it was, no out of pocket. Anyway, we get more information from the genetics of our microbes than our human cells. And we're these symbiotic creatures. And they do really important things. They balance our hormones. They're crucial for detox. They're crucial for nutrient digestion, absorption, for immune function, also for neurotransmitters, for our mental health, our brain function. So when people get these onslaughts of a lot of times what's happening, there are bacteria that are just mutating so fast that, you know, we have these drug resistant bacteria. But what's interesting is plants, the genius of nature. There are plants, and oregano is one of them, but there are many others. There are plants, they have an immune system that fights off viruses, bacteria, other kinds of parasites. And those, the way they've evolved, these chemicals, these plant chemicals or phytochemicals have evolved not to damage the beneficial microbes and to target the destructive microorganisms. But you can't patent oregano, you can't patent cryptolepis, you can't patent alcornia, you can't patent pseudocuta, like you can't patent any of that, right? So there are no drugs. So there are people who are able to do, you know, when they have, now if you have like a severe systemic sepsis, pneumonia, I basically tell people, if you're going to lose a limb or an internal organ or you're going to die, then you're going to have to do IV antibiotics and then clean up the mess later. But what, there are a lot of interesting studies showing that even when you use these herbal antimicrobials that are very broad spectrum as an adjunct to your antibiotic therapy, a lot of people can shorten their duration and frequency of their therapy. They're actually able to have better results. But once you've been through something like that, that heavy of hitting of antibiotics, you're not going to restore your microbiome to how it was before completely, to be realistic, but you can really make a lot of headway. You can change the internal environment. And not only just, you can't just go take probiotics, like it's more complex than that, but you can do things, you can do an advanced stool test, look at what you're deficient in, like what's overgrown, what's deficient, what probiotics you're low in. You can find out specifically for your body where you need support. There's a lot of information. I'll spare you all the nerdy things, but there's a lot of information you can get from a stool test that will tell you what's off. And then there's a lot you can do to correct that and really, and that will change everything about your immune system, your brain. Every cell in your body will be touched by that improvement. I don't know if that really helped Alfred or not, but
and I just would like to add something there. So especially for neuropathy, I think acupuncture could be very, very, very effective.
Oh, it definitely is.
Definitely dealing with your energy flows throughout your nervous system, throughout your body, your meridians, etc. And that is a, you know, it's that science, that practice has been around for 5,000 years. So it's pretty well known and studied and documented. And if you can find a good acupuncturist, particularly for neuropathy, which was the question, I think that could really be very helpful. But also I want to say,
and it's, oh, sorry. Can I just say one little quick thing? Like usually it's not one thing fixes it. It's like you combine, it's like a combination lock. If you just get one number right, it's not going to open. But if you line up the right numbers in the right order, so you combine different therapies and you hit it from all different angles, then that's going to end up, you know, that's where you're going to get the forward momentum.
And also going back to the neuropathy question, I want to say that is why I liked the pulsed frequency approach. That's the basis of my book, because if you can match the frequency of the disease microbe, and you can use that exact frequency to address that disease microbe, it gets overwhelmed and dies, but nothing else is touched. So your normal body function is not damaged in any way. So those are just my comments to add on to that. I know we're running a bit over time. So
well, the metaphor is like an opera singer breaking a glass, right? That kind of thing.
Right. The frequency.
And, Beamer, that's the name of the mat, the PEMF device. It's really good for circulation. Microcirculation is a Beamer. So like red light, Beamer. And then I know there are these leg things that work for neuropathy that are pretty effective. Anyway, all doggy.
Okay. So I think we're a little over time. Yes?
Want to wrap it up? Yes.
Okay, so I want to just reiterate those 3 take-alongs. So remember this, listen to yourself and have faith that what you're hearing is your truth, that nobody else really has access to in the way you do. And use professionals that you feel like consulting with. Use them as a source of answers to what you're looking for. And again, encourage everyone to get multiple opinions. I came home from a hiking trip and I had a really bad knee, and I knew if I went to a regular doctor, they'd be putting me in the hospital for knee replacement. So I went to acupuncture, and it was, again, second time in my life, miraculous. And just remember, we all have to be our best advocates. And that means we're going to have to start demanding change wherever we can in our medical system, our regulatory system, our government officials. And that's what is going to help this movement grow into something really positive for all of us. So thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and come back next month and hear from Edna Tunney of Resonant Light Technologies, and come back the next month and hear from Dr. Billy Buffington, who's a psychiatrist, an MD psychiatrist, and we'll keep the lineup going.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Audrey.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.